heard the why, heard the beauty, the anchoring in your values and who you are from all of you, uh, the centers as well as Tracey and AAA. I know we're still in the middle of it. When you look where we are now, where we began, has this experience really lived out some of that value you talked about, that the community would hear this as you are a part of them, that's what you said, Brenna, that the community would hear this experience that says there are others that can help. Marco talked about that the community sees this as the next best step, as Zoe alluded to and Julie, you talked about. The community knows us, and this is going to help them know us better. As you look back, do you see those things unfolding? And then my follow-up, Tracey, with you is what do you see unfolding in this experience? This was your vision. As you said, you reached out and called us. What do you see unfolding? So maybe we should start with you first, and then the other four would be wonderful.
Yeah. One, I think maybe even somewhat unexpected benefit that I've seen from talking to all the organizations is what Marco was picking up on, which sort of this collaboration between the centers and how you have more resources now, having like pooled resources, that moving forward you can use to help your communities. Obviously every community is different, but I think I was talking maybe Marco or Julie when we saw each other when I was in LA about having access to different languages, different interpretation services, like through this collaboration, just things that I wasn't even thinking about, but is sort of knowing, having myself a background in community mediation, I'm not surprised that that's how you all have moved forward, and sort of the spirit of, collaboration, and how can we sort of help each other, help all of our communities. So I've loved seeing that part of it.
I've really seen this unfolding even with our own organization among our volunteer base, right? Because it's so easy to get stuck in the work that we're already doing and not think about like, hey, what else is in that work? What else could be in that work as well? And I've seen, just by way of involving my board members, by way of involving we have a pretty robust set of volunteers, but I would say like the active committed volunteers that are coming every week and participating in our programs is about 35, right? Reminding them like, hey, we do this work too. Hey, we have this service as well. And what's been really cool is this sort of expansion. Like, yes, mediation, community mediation can be a resource for folks who have even been impacted by wildfire, right? We're not like necessarily thinking of that when we go through our mediation training, right? We're not always thinking specifically about how this work could unfold in all the ways that it's nuanced. And so I've watched that be a really beautiful thing among my volunteers. And they're like, how? And then once we start explaining it, it's like, oh my goodness, it kind of comes alive within their own selves. And then them talking about like, hey, we do this service too. Hey, we are available for this. And so I just have really appreciated the way my volunteers have just expanded their own skills as well. And entered the conversation too.
I think I could add to that a little bit too. The collaborative part for me was really great. I think that a lot of times as centers in our area, it's maybe one of us that are part of a project or something representing LA, and it's different to be on here working on a project together. Allowed us to really think about how we could share resources. And I can give one example of that. Like I have a really big team of volunteer mediators, but we don't really have a specific court connected program. And so I'm able to refer them to Marco, who does that work in a structured way that I trust. And I think we begin to be able to look at each other's offerings and programs and see places where we can complement each other like that. And that's been hard to create that designated space to do that. Like I already knew that Marco, and for a long time, I think I've felt like we've touched on different things, but we really hadn't figured out how that could work together. We just sort of knew each other a little bit. But this gave us sort of like a project to work together and think through some of those things, what it could look like. so that we can expand our footprint in our communities in a time when resources are dwindling and very limited and becoming more and more limited. So I think it's a really important time for the work that we've done together too, in terms of our sustainability as centers. So it's been great to get to know everybody and trust that there's an opportunity to call someone if we need something.
I would echo that. That collaboration has been just so incredible. And I want to give a special shout out to our friends at NAFCM. As Julie said, Julie and I have known each other for quite a bit, and we've sort of danced around, hey, how might we be able to collaborate? And just never quite found the time of like, hey, how might we be able to do that? And so I think even just the structure that NAFCM provided to have us come together to think about how can we brainstorm was really just that spark that I think we needed. At this point, there have been regular meetings where NAFCM brings us together as centers to talk through, okay, how do we continue this work? How are our work plans going? But we've been meeting outside of that as well. And I think for me, that speaks to just, again, the growth and sustainability of like, no, actually, we want to meet more. We have more ideas and more things that we want to do together. And so I think just that initial funding, that initial spark, what that allows us to do and just the momentum that it allowed us to create has been incredible.
And that's great to hear as a funder, because you always want to be the seed money. You always want to be sort of like that spark, like you said, that sort of starts things. And like you were saying, Brenna, like, yes, it's rapid response, but it's I totally understand it's a long-term, right, process. And there's going to be lots of ripple effects for years and years to come. So yeah, I think that the part about collaboration is really unforeseen positive here.
All right, so I have one final question. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, guys. The time flies by so fast. And so just really simply, my question is there like one example of a tangible impact that you guys are having, maybe a testimony of someone, an experience, or just a really brief story about the impact this is having that you've heard from somebody who you're providing service to through this grant?
I could share. Zoe and I had an opportunity to sit in on a community meeting in Altadena with members of the LGBTQ community. And I think it was that day that I really began to realize the even like secondary impacts of a disaster has, and that the loss isn't really, it's hard to encapsulate that in I lost my home. People have lost their homes, they lost their memories, but they've also lost their community and that center of grounding that we have in being part of a community. So when people had to move, I believe that I heard recently it was like 6,000 homes lost in that area. And when you go back, it's not the same. And many people haven't come back. And I think it's hard to put that loss into words sometimes, without just feeling what people are feeling and being there and seeing how much it's physically changed the community. And taking away that sense of safety that you have. We heard that a lot in the conversation of this group, that they had a sense of community and safety among their neighbors, and that's gone. And rebuilding that. And I really think, again, that community mediation can play a role in that too. Whether it's assimilating in new people that move into the area to become part of that community, or just knowing how you can support each other in rebuilding that community. So those stories really stuck with me, and just the depth of what people were feeling and how they were impacted.
Share a story. We did a mediation between a couple who just as the fires were breaking out, when the winds start to blow at a certain mile per hour, they do what's called a public safety power shutoff. And oftentimes they'll warn folks in the area, hey, we're going to shut off your power. Make sure that you go get ice for your food, right, in your fridge, because it's going to cut off power to the fridge. And so this couple came and they were suing Southern California Edison. If you know the history in California, huge player in the wildfires, right? So while it was made clear from the very beginning that there was never going to be a settlement, there was this opportunity to be heard. And for those folks to be able to sit in front of a representative from Southern California Edison who actually genuinely listened, who genuinely heard, and genuinely express thoughts and feelings and empathy for them. It really was validating for them to say, hey, we may not have lost our home, but we suffered the loss of food for X amount of days. And this is the hardship that it caused us. And we don't have a lot of money. And we were really scared. And so um, that moment of being able to have someone feel validated by being heard, to share their experience with a big player, right? And some of these disasters was it stuck with me. It stuck with my co-mediator. I mean, it was a touching moment to also have the representative give them, just the validation and hear them, and then acknowledgement, I think, was a big thing too, right? Because in these disasters, there's so many folks that are impacted, and you oftentimes feel like you don't have a voice and you can't get someone else on the other end of the line, and communication has gone out the window, and all of a sudden you end up in court where you never expected to be there. And so being able to have that facilitator there, that neutral third party, help the communication flow is a gift. It just is a gift. So I'm proud to be part of it.
It's really at the beginning. I mean, I actually have a call next week. Someone reached out to me, a council person from the Palisades, who wants to talk about this. So, I think that, as the word gets out that you all are doing this work, I think there's going to be more and more sort of outreach in terms of people saying, okay, how can I help my constituents? How can I help my community? How can I help my neighborhood? So I think getting the word out is a big part of this. So this podcast, thank you for helping to get the word out.
Just share one more impact story. We had another case that we mediated with a landlord and a tenant. And it's interesting, we had a lot of cases where it wasn't clear that there was a fire-related story until later on. It was like a multifamily home where the owner was renting out a unit to the tenant, and they were choosing to not renew the lease and evict them and evict the tenant. And the tenant was understandably upset. And the tenant, as a lot of them do when they're being evicted, their fears were that, the reason for this was retaliatory, personal. The landlord wanted to charge more rent. And when they were open to mediation and we were able to call the landlord, we found out that their family member had lost their home in the fire, and they felt like they had a duty to make that unit available to their family member to have a place to live. And they were really like stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they felt like they had to show up for that family member and make something available and do what they could, even if it meant putting this person who, was a person but not their family, out of a home. And we were able to negotiate a move out agreement for the tenant. And I think it's one of these examples of when everybody's in a really hard situation, if they're able to work together, they can work something out.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. DG, you had any closing remarks there?
It was more a reflection of Tracey the connector, because I immediately visioned, oh my goodness, what you all could do in Pacific Palisades if this council person really is interested. So thank you, Tracey, for always thinking of us, always for how can we connect and support what's going on. I'm grateful. So that was going to be my closing. But Zoe, I loved your story as well. So thank you for making sure we heard that.
Thank all of you guys for being here. Tracey, Brenna, Julie, Mark, Zoe. As I always say, thank you for keeping it 100, as our podcast is called, because you guys have done that. And we're just amazed and happy about the work you guys are doing, the collaboration and the infrastructure you guys are building for, to being prepared for anything that happens in the future. You guys are already connected and established and ready to rock and roll. But we thank you, and we say hats off to you for the work you're doing. And thanks for being a part of our podcast. And we appreciate you signing off. Thanks so much. Take care.